grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We about to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Tass, if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Tass, if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Tass, if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Tass, if it's your ex drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I am your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It's my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, talk shit, talk shop, get drunk, do drugs, and reminisce about crazy old stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do, hang out with people and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, comedian Sean Donnelly.
Hello there. How are you? Thanks for having me.
What's up, man?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Fantastic.
I'm so proud of you that you're now the ex-drinking buddy.
Yeah.
Because I've been going hard lately, and I think I should become an ex-drinking buddy. I think this is more of a sign. Is this a way intervention for me?
Kevin and Ray were like, hey, man, you got to get Sean on. He's got to talk to you about some stuff. Plug everything up front. Let everybody know where they can find you. This will come out in 10 days. Any shows you have coming up? I know you've got the Sirius show.
Yes, I have a Sirius radio show every Wednesday at 3 p.m. called Celebrate, where we celebrate one thing a week because things are kind of shitty right now, so we celebrate. Also, I have a podcast, very funny podcast called Brand New Jerks with one of your former guests, super funny comedian Ray Zawadney. It's a podcast for recovering people pleasers. The goal of the podcast is we're trying to be more assertive.
Yes.
But then we fuck around and it's actually really fun. And then besides that, you can check me out on social media. It's at SeanyTime. That's SeanyTime on Instagram and Twitter.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you are obviously really well known in the comedy community. You've got the shows and everything, but for the people listening, I kind of wanted to talk about, like you, how you got into stand-up and everything like that, because that's what we do a lot on the show. Is it's a lot of stand-up and then it's a lot of booze and drugs.
Absolutely. Well, I get asked this question a good amount, and I think there's two ways. It's almost like choose your own adventure. Do you want the romantic one, or do you want the romantic one is kind of lackluster. Do you want the real actual?
The real one, yeah.
There's a romantic aspect to it. I always loved stand-up. My earliest thing was listening to George Carlin records with my dad.
Okay.
I was obsessed with all the Opie and Anthony comics from back in the late 90s, and like Patrice and Norton and all those guys.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to get into it. Never had the balls to do it. Didn't start till I was 28. But the real reason I got into it is because I just started running shows because I wanted to be around it.
Oh, okay.
But didn't actually have the guts to do it, right?
Yeah.
So Joe DeVito, I don't know if you know who Joe DeVito is, amazing, super underrated, writes for Gutfeld now, amazing stand-up comedian who I've known for years and years. I ran a show with him at a place called Jack Dempsey's on 33rd Street.
Okay.
And this is how much I wanted to be around comedy. I used to bark and not go up. And
What?
I used to hand out flyers for the show and then just be like, okay, I'll just watch
You just
the
wanted
show.
people at the show.
I just wanted people at the show and I wanted to be around comedy,
Yeah.
right? So to his credit, Joe knew I wanted to do it. And one day he goes, there is an open mic around the corner from here this same night we were doing the show at this place called Maui Taco, which was on 5th Avenue. I think it's gone now. And he goes, you should go check it out. If you think you want to go up, you should go up, right? So one day I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I go around and I walk into this neon lights, whatever you would call it, the overhead office lights, a bright taco place, like almost like a fast food chain that didn't have any other locations.
Yeah, I know exactly the vibe.
Smelled kind of gross for a taco place. I go to they have a giant basement. I go down and it's there's a a ceramic VW bus coming out of the wall. The comics are standing on like two milk crates with a blanket over it. There's it's almost like a Fisher Price setup for the microphone.
Oh my God.
The people watching are other stand-ups, which is normal for a mic, and people full on eating their tacos, not even bothered listening to what's going on. And at that moment, I was like, oh, this is so bad. I could do this.
Yeah. It's not even that hard.
Oh my, and I was watching it. I'm like, and it's open micers, and you're supposed to be bad at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm watching people bomb after bomb after bomb, and I'm going, oh, I could be this bad. Yeah. I found my people. I'm so insecure at that point. I'm like, oh, I found my tribe here, the bad kind. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to try it. So about a week later, I go. I have.
So you didn't even go up at that point. You just went and checked it out.
I went and checked it out. And then went back and handed out flyers and did not go up. And then I went the following week, I think, and I had about a shot of tequila and 2 Coronas just to be on brand with the Maui Taco. And I went up, and I always say this: I think a lot of the time there's so much effort and so much adrenaline and so much like just mind preparation before you go up for your first time. It usually goes pretty well.
Yeah,
there's so much.
I've had a lot of comics on, and almost exclusively their first time, whether they invite a lot of friends or it's just because they've been working on the material for so long, and they've got it down.
And there's such an excitement and such like I don't know what, like you can't really recapture that. It's one of those life experiences that that changes you forever, meaning that once you do it once, that's that thing you've gone over that like you'll never be the same.
Yeah, it'll never be like that again.
Never be the same. It's almost like a quasi virginity in a way.
It's a lot like that because, and I talk to people because I've had people on where they say they like doing stand up because they like attention and it was the easiest way to get it. Then I have people like myself who like I idolize like Lenny Bruce and I study comedy and I love comedy and it is the biggest thing in my life. So it's like that's why I do it. And it's so weird because whether you're like me or you're like people who just do it because it's fun, like karaoke, they're like, yeah, it's a good time. Doesn't matter what part of the spectrum you're on. Everyone says the same thing. They're like, yeah, I went up and it just happened and it was over. And I was like, fucking, that was crazy.
Yes. Because no matter what you tell somebody before they go up, they're not believing. Like I try to make people feel better. And I say, you got to try it once because in the grand scheme of things, that first set, you'll always remember it, but it will be one set in the mix of thousands.
Yeah.
So, and if you keep going, you might go up and go, I hate this. I have to get out of it. Right. So nobody will ever believe you until they're up there doing it and they get off and they're like, holy shit, I did it. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I agree. And also a lot of the time, you realize very early on, like I started because I always loved it as well, like you did, but also because I was like, I'm always funny with my friends, I'm funny at home, whatever it is, but then you realize pretty soon into it, it's a way different.
It's way different because I love that you say that because at my night job where I serve, I wait tables and stuff. And it's funny because I do a lot of training. And whenever a new person comes in and they train with me, they see kind of how intense I am. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the course of either the shift or the next couple of weeks, someone will be like, oh, Brennan, when's your next show? And they go, and like the new person will go, show? What do you mean? Are you a musician? I go, no, I do stand up. And they go, you do stand up? It's like, yeah, it's a different fucking muscle.
I've had that said to me. They're like, you don't seem that funny. And I'm like, yeah, because I've been doing stand up for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't need to be the goofy guy doing impressions at work. I get my fix going to shows.
You're not the always on guy anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Once you do it, because I started, like I was telling you before we started recording, I started in 2009. So it's gotten to the point now where it's like, yeah, I've got the part of my brain that's always writing, and I'm always like, oh, that'll be a good bit because I tell stories. So it's like, oh, that'll be a good bit. Get that tag there. But I'm no longer the person at work or when I was in school in class being like, hey.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The class clown. Or
yeah, exactly.
But I think the public, and there's been so much fourth wall broken down in comedy in the past, like 7 years.
Yeah,
with
podcasting,
crashing and podcasting, and people just know so much inside baseball.
Nasal now,
stuff.
Everyone's like, oh, that's how it works. I'm like,
yeah, but to this day, you'll have people who come to shows who don't realize, hey, I like the people who think they can do it, where they go, oh, I'm really funny at my job, or they'll bring up stories, or you ever have a show where the person in the audience. I've had this where they're friends from work, and you'll see a group of like girls or a whole mix of people from that job, and the one guy not laughing is the guy who's probably funny at work.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
one guy who's like, "This is my thing. What are you guys doing?
I do this."
Yeah,
it's also interesting because there's always the people in the not always, but a lot of times there's people in the audience. To your point of not understanding, where they go, "Oh, I'm going to be a part of the show."
Yes.
And they'll it's one thing like if a comedian's doing crowd work because they know where to take it. They know exactly what they're doing. But sometimes people think it's like open-ended. Like you'll ask the audience like, hey, anybody ever, work in the service industry? Because I have a lot of jokes about that. So I'd gauge the room because if no one in there's worked in a restaurant, I'm not going to do the material.
But it's half rhetorical. Yeah.
Exactly. It's almost, it's like I just need a yes or a no and I know where we're going. But then you'll have people who are like, oh, I'm the funny guy at work. This comic is opening up the door for interaction. Let me talk to him. And that I cannot stand.
See, I have a kind of differing opinion, and I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
If I can. So basically, if I may. Now, I think the one question, I work in the service industry, at opening half rhetorical, then you go into the bits. That is clear cut. That is clear cut. I will do crowd work. If you go past a certain point in crowd work, I'm the type where I don't. If somebody else shouts something out, I'll give them a little tiny bit of leeway because I'm like, well, you're seeing me talk to this person a lot. So I get if you think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Also, where we're at business-wise, if people put crowd work, the idea of crowd work, when I first started, it was, and for me, I'm better at crowd work than I am at writing jokes. I'm okay. I have good ones, bad ones, great ones.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm so bad at crowd work.
Okay, but here's the thing. Crowd work to me, what it used to be was like crowd work is to fill time. I'm like, part of my laziness is based off why I'm so great at crowd work. Now, the thing about it is that the attitude towards crowd work has changed over. It used to be like, no, jokes are king, and you work on the jokes, and then crowd work comes. It's a learnable skill, which is also joke writing is as well. But if you look at the way that the business has changed in the past 5 years with everything being DIY and the amount of crowd work clips there are on Instagram, and you are a random audience member that's never gone to a comedy show before, and you're flipping through and you see somebody who's doing that amount of crowd work and all their clips, crowd work, and you go to their show, you have a reasonable expectation that you should be allowed to shout shit out of
That's
that
true. Absolutely. I didn't
and
think
it's
about
wrong.
that.
That's not right. It's wrong. But it's the comic's fault for not.
We flood the market with like destroy heckler or this person shouts out this, and then the people go to the show and they go, "Hey, I want to be a part of a clip." You had the one really good one with the kid.
Oh God,
that was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, I was doing that. Was like right end of COVID, like whatever it was.
It was a rooftop show, wasn't it, or an outdoor show?
Outdoor restaurant show.
Okay.
Baby Brasa.
Okay.
Then my friend, do you know Amanda Gale?
No.
Oh, Amanda and Elle Orlando used to run a show.
Yeah.
Used to run a show at Baby Brasa, and they had it in the tent outside, like this like makeshift kind of area. And I was up there, and it's going like okay. I don't even remember. I think it was like whatever. And this kid, you know those kids that are like 10, but they're like selling candy to like, I don't know, to like support their family or something? Like, it's like, yeah, can we just admit those are all scams? Like,
yeah, this
like,
is a bad
this is for my
idea.
Basketball team. It's like, there's no team. Let's be honest. I'd rather you just be honest. Hey, this is for my family's rent.
Yeah.
I'd be more inclined
have
to
AC. Yeah,
exactly. Or have AC. So I'm up there, and this kid just in the middle, there's a whole audience. It's enough of a comedy setup. This kid just brazenly just walks up to the front.
Gotta respect it.
And tries to sell me the can. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I start kind of having like it wasn't a real meltdown, but I was like, this is where my career's at. I'm getting heckled by a kid selling candy.
So
and the kid had like an 8-ball bomber jacket on, like he was in a 90s movie. Like he's Richard Grieco.
The best part too was like, and like to the point of what we're talking about, it was hilarious. So you cut it up and you put it up, and it's like this is hilarious.
And what's crazy is I didn't know that clip existed. That was a while after it happened that I put it out. And Elle was like, "Hey, I got that clip of that kid."
Oh, really?
She's like, "I got part of your set if you want it." And I was like, "Oh wow!" And I looked. I'm like, "I got to put this."
Absolutely, I want it. Yeah. God, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun moving to New York. The one thing I have noticed is the weird transition going from the Southeast, where I was like featuring and headlining some and like, you know, doing the thing.
You eat shit when you
then you come to New York and I'm like, hey guys, I've got an hour, I've got the podcast, and they go, the open mics are that way. And you're like, no, I've been doing this for like a decade. They go, yeah, the open mics are that way. And I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, that I know a lot of people. I've heard. I have stories about people who have like I've been on the road and they're like, I'm moving to New York, and I was like, hey man, you should consider Chicago first.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I have friends that are very like powerful, like boom, boom, like kind of comics. I go, hey, when are you guys going to come up to New York? And they go, we're not.
Yeah.
Like I pay all of my bills touring the Southeast and around the country and doing festivals. Why in God's name would I go start over in the biggest comedy community in the world? And it's like, yeah, good point.
It just depends on what you want. If you're content to doing road the rest of your life, that's great. New York, it still has that New York thing to it, but you can same way with those heckler videos or the crowd videos, you can make the argument that you can get as ahead, being having a huge online presence and being somewhere else.
I saw that during the pandemic. There are a couple of people I knew, Florida comedians who started doing stuff on like TikTok and Instagram and then blew up. And now they live in LA. And when they got there, because they had, 100, 200, 300,000 followers, there was no open mic back of the line for them because the clubs see that and they're like, oh, this person can draw. Come on in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so you can't do that too.
It shows you how crummy the business is because it's basically the bar business with a show.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So they're going, you're putting butts in seats? Yeah, we'll have, you can do whatever you want. You can do 2 hours.
Yeah. They don't care. And it's also.
It's not every club. It's not every venue,
all.
but it's a lot of them. And you kind of get it, but you don't at the same time.
And it's interesting because when I got here, I remember talking to a friend of the show and we were talking about him earlier, Matt Fulstron, and I was like, hey man, like I want to sit down with some managers and stuff, and like I really think I could take my career to the next level. And because he's been in the business a long time, he told me something which was the best advice ever. He goes, listen, man, when you sit down with them, remember in their eyes, it's a business.
Yeah.
Like they don't care about your love of comedy. They don't care about your studying of Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and like saying something, but also making it funny, but also making people think. He's like, they really don't give a shit about any of that.
They don't.
It's about what are your podcast numbers? How much money can you bring for us? Where do you fit in? Like, so we can, and I was like, that was like a cold real, because I've been doing comedy for over a decade. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, it's not about the jokes for everybody.
Not even close.
It's not even close.
I think you have two parts of this. You have show business, and then you have live stand-up, which is like the street fight part of this business. Yeah. And the street cred part of the business. So you have comics. Comics know what comics like. Comics know they talk shit to each other, and they know what comics like, and who. But at the end of the day, comics they are kind of compromising for show business.
Yeah. Well, we say it all the time. When you're at an open mic and you're trying to make the comics laugh, it's like they don't buy tickets, man. Like,
and people get stuck in that.
Yeah, I do it all the time where I'm like, oh, this is super dark. Like, I'm gonna get the room, and then you try to do it on a real show, and the whole room goes silent, and you go, oh yeah, these aren't broken toys. These are well-adjusted people. Totally. And there's something to be said for it. That's your sense of humor. That's dark humor. That you can come over that obstacle. Because I've seen so many people that were like killing mics because they were dark, and then be able to sell their dark jokes to a regular audience, which I love. Actually, it's so hard to do, but I've also seen open mic killers go up at regular hot shows and eat it. Yeah, like it happened. Oh, sure. 100%. Oh, that makes me so nervous. It's one of those things. It's a matter of you need the right mix of self delusion and self awareness. Yeah, absolutely. It's the idea where I'm the greatest piece of shit in the world. It's like that. That's exactly what it is. Because it's weird because I tell my girlfriend all the time. I'm like, well, the comedy's not going to fire me. Like there is no end. Well, that's that Borghetti bit. He did it a while ago because he goes, "There's no boss." When I walk into Cosby's office and go, "I'm out," but it was an old joke. Yeah, but that's the truth. So it's like I'm going to keep doing the podcast. Like I'm going to keep doing the shows. I'll keep doing open mics if that's and getting booked as much as I can. Like I'm just going to keep doing it because I can still pay my bills. Working a couple days a week at the restaurant. So it's like I'm just going to keep going. So that's like the delusional part where it's like eventually it's going to hit. But then there are times where I come off stage and I'm like, you're not funny. Like you're the biggest piece of shit in the world. So it's like that weird mix of like, but also, I'm going to do this forever. And then it's like, you should quit and move back home. Everybody has it. Everybody has it. It's crazy. It's so funny. But also the way it is now is like, I do, and it sucks because the way I came up was like you don't want to be the old curmudgeon who's like, in my day. Yeah. But the way you want to be adaptable. And I think the way the business is now, I think live stand-up is if you're doing a hierarchy in show business, it's taken a backseat to social media. Because I think pandemic was a huge part of it. Yeah. I think comics, you could rest on the laurels of like, yeah, you might be dancing and have 1 million followers, but I still have that saving grace. I still have that prestige of I go up and I make in a live audience and I make, I'm in the room. I can do it in the room. I can do it in the room. And then that didn't exist for 2 years. Yeah. And then every comic was like, I want to survive. And they were like, I'll just do what you do. And then I'll do the dancing. I'll do the dancing. And that hasn't shaken out yet. It's look at the podcast, look at the videos, look at what we talked about. So I think that now what it is like, put it this way, I did the Tonight Show in January, right? Every time I would do a late night spot, the late night spot was the thing. Yeah. I got told multiple times by people after I did it, oh, great, now you cut it up and you put it on your Instagram. I'm like, shouldn't that not even be? It's on national television. I did it. It's just non-existent. I've had comics tell me that about not only late night sets, but like like actual spots, like on Comedy Central and stuff. It's like, all right, cool.
Now put it on social, and they're like, no, you put it on the network. That was the thing. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Don't get me wrong. It's like it's a good thing to promote. It's a good thing to talk to your friends. People within the scene think that, hey, you're getting stuff. You got that Comedy Central thing. You got a late night. But overall, somebody could be at a mic that's killer and do one bit that makes them 45 million views.
Yeah.
And they're doing way better than you are.
Well, and that's the other thing.
Why it's kind of a little bit nonsensy. Because I do like I like the gatekeeper model when it comes to those kind of examples.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's another thing too, where sometimes people are so eager to get stuff online, to get the content, you put the bit up before it's ready.
Mm-hmm. Or you're putting just interstitials that make no sense.
Yeah, or
that only would have made sense in the room.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, no. Or you're putting up a bit that, like I said, it's not ready. So it's like you'll put it up on your professional page, and you'll like dump $1,000 into getting it like pushed in front of people so they view it, and it's a sponsored ad. But it's like a 45-second clip. And it's like, that's a 12-second joke, man. Like you could have done the work, whittled it down, and then bang, bang, bang.
Right.
But you were like, no, it was a good crowd. They got a lot of laughs, so I'm just going to put it up. Nobody's watching 45 seconds. I know that from this show.
Yeah.
If the clip's under 20 seconds, people will watch it. If it's over 20, just that 19 to 21 seconds, it's fucked.
Yeah. It's insane. I literally have ADD. I took Ritalin as a kid, and I feel like everybody's just kind of caught up to where I'm at.
Yeah. Everyone's finally like, 15 seconds. Here we go.
Yeah, like mine by ADD is probably worse now than it ever was, but I think that's what's happening. That's why it kind of sucks, because there's different art forms. Like I said before, like the 5-minute late night set is this thing that became like a perfected art form over time. That now is kind of it's still a thing, obviously, but it's not crafted the way it was. It's not like we were saying. All it matters for is the clips. You can take it piecemeal instead of taking it as one cohesive thing. Now nobody's working for the way. Honestly, when I started in the city, because I'm from Long Island, right? Okay. And the problem you ran into is you got here and you're like, I'm used to headline, I'm used to feature around the country, and they're like, here's the open mic. Mine was guys knowing me really early on bad. And then probably after you get good, they go, oh, I'm not booking that guy.
I know him.
I saw him at a thing. Anyway, but I remember when guys like Norman and all of us, List and Soder, I don't know about them, but my mindset was you get that in the city. It doesn't work for feature on the road. In the city, back in 2006, the olden times, I guess, you would get that 5 minutes that murders, and you would kind of, because all your spots would be 7 minutes at these bar shows or 7 minutes at these guest spots on clubs, whatever it was. So if you had 5 minutes that murdered, you could make a name for yourself in the city. And then as you're doing it more and more, you would grow from there, and then you have 10, then you have 15, and then you get yourself a late night set, and then you get yourself a half hour on Comedy Central, and then you get yourself an hour, or you move to LA and start acting. It was like a weird, like there was kind of a path. Yeah,
there was an outline of kind of how to do it. And it's funny you bring that up, because even you said 2006, but this happened just because we had Caitlin Plufo on, and she talked about like doing open mics, then hosting the open mic, then doing bar shows, then hosting bar show, and like slowly building, and then all of a sudden now she's passed all over the city.
Right.
But it started from like, okay, I just need to get this 5 minutes at this open mic. I just need to hammer this down. And then the more she was killing there, she started to move up. And then all of a sudden now she's, at the cellar, the stage, she's everywhere.
Right.
And so so you can still take that path. The only thing now is like, it's so.
But that path would have gotten her more 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so.
It got me more 10 years ago.
Yeah. And so you said you grew up in Long Island. Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I was born in Staten Island, but I was.
Shouts out, gang.
But I grew up most of my life on like the border of like right when you get to Long Island, like by Floral Park, by like Garden City, New Hyde Park area.
So when you said you didn't start stand up till you were 28, but you've always loved it. Was that just something you said listening to Carlin albums and stuff with your dad as a kid? Was that just something? I mean, growing up in the city, to me, it blows my mind, because what I know from comedy is when I was 12, I would record on VHS like Mitch Hedberg and Tom Rhodes and all that kind of stuff.
Half hours.
Comedy Central presents. Yeah.
Nick Swartzen's half hours, unbelievable.
Yeah. Dane's original half hour was the reason I started doing comedy.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
When he rips his shirt off and stuff, I'm like, because I would watch Mitch, and I've said this a million times, but I would watch Mitch and Tom and them, and I'd be like, this is hilarious. but I can't do that. Like, that's not my style. And then when Dane rips his shirt off and dumps water on him, I'm like, oh, I could do that. Like, that looks like fun. And then, but like to grow up in New York and just be around, like you could walk down the street and fucking see Carlin or anybody you wanted to. So was that a big part of your childhood, or?
Well, no, because you didn't. so like, no, I wouldn't. Stand up, I would like, when you're a kid, you would go into the city, even being where I was, a handful of times when I was a kid, then I was older. So but you're also, the first comedy show I went to, I think, was at like Boston Comedy Club in the Village.
I remember the stories about that.
And I was wearing like a rugby, like a green and white striped rugby shirt, and I had like one of those old man like Irish caps on. I think I might have had a beard at the time.
Just really playing into the Donnelly.
Yeah, and Patrice O'Neill, everybody was trying to make fun of me. They did. They kind of made fun of me. And then Patrice O'Neill went for 5 minutes straight, just went head to toe and just destroyed me.
You did it?
And I loved every second of it. Yeah, exactly.
That's what he was known for. And because I know Burr talks about it now to this day, is like you can't do some of that stuff anymore because comics get so like,
uptight.
And you're like, because I the first time I met Burr in the city, a friend of mine, he was hanging out with a friend of mine who knew him, and then my friend left, and I showed up late. So my introduction was gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just standing at the bar now, like looking at Verzi, talking to Bill, and I was like, should I go say hi? Like, my friend was just here, but I just missed him. So I'm standing there, and then he said something and laughed, or he said something and I laughed, and then Bert turns to me and he goes, are you going to join our conversation or just stand there like a fucking creep? And to me, I was like, that's the best interaction I could have ever asked for. But I'll tell other comics that, like younger comics, and they're like, well, that's rude. And I go, no, that's Bill. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
It's also pretty funny. Yeah. It's also endearing, and it's actually a friendlier way. There's a lot of comics that just would have ignored you the whole time.
Exactly.
And that's because because that guy, I don't know him very well. I don't know him at all, to be honest. I know him very little. But as from what I know, what you see that's him.
That's exactly what you get.
Yes.
And so it was
which is very hard, which you don't see all the time.
No, at all. And Patrice used to say, they can't cancel me because I am who they thought I was. Like he was always himself.
Well, I don't even know. Well, I don't even think cancel was out when he was alive.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. They're like, they can't shut me down. Well,
yeah.
Also, he was known for being, from what I hear, I heard the story about The Office that they wanted him. He was on The Office as a warehouse guy, and they wanted him back, and he just didn't show.
He just didn't
give a shit. Yeah.
Well, and because I know Bill will sometimes on the Monday morning podcast will play like clips from years ago, like a decade ago. He does that on Thursday, and one of them was literally a whole interview when he, Norton, and Patrice were all on Opie and Anthony. And it's like a 2-hour clip. And I didn't come up with that. So I'm listening to it for the first time like, this is amazing.
Yeah. And you should go down a rabbit hole on YouTube.
I have
Opie and
to.
Anthony clips.
Because it's just like people are calling in and stuff, and Patrice is like, listen, bitch. And I was like, this is awesome.
You ever see he shuts down some lady on like Channel 9 News or something? So they go back and forth, and he just rings her out. And he's right. Like whatever he's saying is absolutely right. But no, those clips were fantastic.
I gotta go back and watch some of them. But
I used to skip. I used to go to Nassau Community College. I don't want to brag.
Shouts out.
And I used to skip classes just to finish listening to the show.
Oh, really?
Or the segment or whatever it was. And those guys were always the ones on.
Yeah, because they're the best. And I know Norton.
Great guy.
Yeah, he's a regular at my girlfriend's restaurant. I won't mention where, but he's a regular there. So it's so funny because when we were in Florida, she would always text me when like big comics would come. Because we lived in Jacksonville. We worked at one of the best restaurants in Jacksonville. So all the
Rough place, Jacksonville.
But all the people playing the Florida theater would stay at the hotel across the street, and our restaurant was in the bottom of that hotel.
Yeah.
So like Rogan, Gabriel Iglesias, Kevin Hart, like they all ate in our restaurant because that was the only good restaurant around.
Yeah.
So she would always text me. And now that we live in New York, she texts me, but I'm like, yeah, this is where we live. This is a normal thing.
But she's still excited.
Yeah, and she said the same thing. She's like, he's so sweet. And I was like, yeah, he's kind of like
really good dude.
I'm like, he's kind of raunchy on stage. It's kind of what he's known for. She goes, oh no, he's so polite, so sweet.
Very nice guy.
Oh, cool.
He's also I open up from every once in a while, and it could not be a better guy. And then, but even years ago, when Opie and Anthony was a thing, I had a film production class, and we were supposed to make a document or some kind of film.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make a movie about comedy, and I contacted him, and he wrote me back, and he was like, yeah, just let me know.
That's
He
awesome.
was so cool. And then now I know him from the cellar, and opened up for him and stuff, and he couldn't. Also, he's a guy who that's also him. That's a lot of those guys are like that.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with a lot of LA guys, not to be a dick, but you don't get that. A lot of newer comics, you don't get that. Like those guys are who they are. Bobby Kelly, all those guys.
That's another problem that I have is because I'm very authentic. And so when I like talk to people, I'll be like, hey, let's do this. So there's so many times where I'll be on a show with somebody, even like super new comics, like a couple of years, like they're doing bar shows and stuff. And I'll be on a show with them. I'll be like, hey, do you want to do the podcast? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And then I'll like send them a message or something, and they're like, big time me. And I'm
yeah, that's going to happen.
and it has happened quite a few times, but I was like, just say no in the room. Like, don't be a fucking baby and just say no.
Yeah, I know.
But it doesn't happen. And I'm like, oh my God.
And that comes out of 18 different things. And I get it in a way because that comes out of insecurity, but also thinking they're bigger time than they are, or not just trying to be human and be like, hey, I'm just too busy. I can't do it. Yeah. I agree with you. Just say no. Yeah,
just be like, nah, I don't want, it's not on brand. It's not, because like there are certain comics that I've reached out to that I used to perform with, and now they're much bigger, and I've reached out and they've literally been like, because we're friends on a level, and they're like, listen man, like I have a team now, like I can't, it's like it's not gonna work, and I'm just like, okay, no problem. It's kind of douchey way to put it, but
fuck that.
It's a really douchey way to put it, but thanks for saying no.
It's also a bullshit reason. Like you could do whatever you wanted. Like that's the thing that I hate. They can do what are they, is there a team going to stop them from doing your it's like shut the fuck up. It's one of these things. Sorry, I'm cursing so much.
Fuck it. Let it fly.
But absolutely, people have I think the egos are very fragile, obviously, and people have to get over themselves a little bit and realize when something will help somebody's show. And if you have a name, that's your time, especially that you can kind of give back a little bit. But I think people are thinking about their own things, which I get in a way as well.
Yeah, totally, 100% understand.
But still, it's like stop being silly, be a human, do your friend's podcast.
Just say yes or no.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted. So you said you went to. Well, let's talk about it. So you're an Irish guy. You like to drink and have a good time.
Yeah, too much. I'm actually. We said it before. I said to you. I said drinking. I probably should stop.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't think I'm at problem point. Maybe problem, but not alcoholic point.
Yeah.
Not where it's like the actual full on, but it's definitely on the spectrum.
When is
Like it's like the Asperger's of alcoholism. It's just it's there, you know.
I gotta write that down. When did you start drinking?
Oh, that's another thing I didn't start. So in high school, I skateboarded in high school. And
did you really?
Yeah.
You're the fourth comic I've had on that started skateboarding.
Yes, there is. Well, who? No, I know Norman.
Norman? Oh, well, I haven't had Norman on, but I know Norman did it. Fulcheron, a very funny comic.
Fulcheron looks like he skated.
Alex Nicholas out of Jersey. He's a very funny comic. He started skateboarding, and now you. Yeah,
in high school, for all of high school, only about the first 1 or 2 years of college, I was still kind of skateboarding. But big part of my life, a lot of friends from that time.
Yeah.
So I didn't start drinking till like, this sounds like it's early, but like senior year of high school. But
me too. I was the same way.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm a full-blown alcoholic, and I didn't start drinking until my senior year of high school because I was so like, it was weird because I was like, I saw what alcohol did to people around me, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to touch that. Like, that's poison. And then the second I got like really drunk, I was like, all my anxiety went away and my depression. I was like, what is this magical elixir?
It feels so good when it hits my lips. I just rewatched Old School, yeah.
Yeah, they just came out on Netflix. It was funny. During that scene, my girlfriend goes to make fun of me, and she looks up when he's doing I don't know, it's a nice Saturday, maybe the Home Depot. She goes, that's so you, because she's only seen me in sobriety. She goes, that is so you. And then literally immediately after he drinks, he goes, once it hits your lips, it's so good. And I go, that's also me. Like, you have to understand, that's also me.
You don't know that part of it. Yeah, exactly.
Fill it up again.
So no, I just went from there, and then I've been drinking ever since like college age. But I didn't even in college. I went to Manhattan College at first, hung out with my skateboarder friends. We didn't drink that much, and then when I got out of there, back in Long Island, I was starting, and like drinking's just kind of been part of my life since then, I guess.
Okay,
and
so
I'm 44 now, so it's a while.
Like 21, 22?
Yeah,
When you
around
went
there
back home?
really
Yeah.
really started picking up. Yeah.
So what were you doing? Because you said you started at Manhattan College and then you went to, what was the other school you mentioned?
Nassau Community College.
But
yeah.
what happened in between? Were you like switching majors or did you just not like the school? Or
No, I went to Manhattan College, and I didn't like. I guess I didn't like it. I was an 18-year-old idiot.
Yeah.
And I went to my parents, and I didn't do that well the first year. And I went to my parents, and I was like, I don't like it. They're like, all right, well, you're not doing great, and we're not going to pay. My parents weren't wealthy, so they were like, yeah, okay, come home. You're going to Nassau. That's the one saving grace I have is I don't have student debt. Because I went to Nassau, then I went to Hunter, and that was like affordable enough where I don't have student debt. But yeah, my parents were like, "What are you, dumb? Like, yeah, come home. Well, I'm not paying for it." And I was like, "Oh, I thought I'd just be able to go back and hang out."
Yeah. So when you went to, did you go to? You had mentioned a film class earlier. Did you go to Hunter for film or?
I went to Hunter for film, but no, the film class was at Nassau Community College.
Oh, okay.
And the professor, his claim to fame was that he was a cameraman on Happy Days.
Oh, really?
And he was miserable. He had this like Raleigh fingers mustache, really uptight kind of guy, and it was really a gruff, just not a good dude.
Yeah.
Like really angry every class, yelling and angry the whole time. But that's when I was going to do the movie about comedy. But we switched up because we ended up joining groups or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then you go to Hunter, and now once you're at Hunter, are you partying all the time?
No, because I'm working at the same time. I am partying, but it's not in the way of a college way.
Okay. What work were you doing?
I was working at this place called the Albert Ellis Institute, which is around the corner from Hunter. This guy who passed away, this guy invented this thing called rational emotive behavioral therapy, and I ran his bookstore, and I sent books to people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I would go to classes in the afternoon or towards night. And the guy was a character. He was like 90-something when he died. Another guy, old guy, who he wouldn't talk to unless you were like his like compatriot, like unless you were like in his business.
Yeah.
So I would just do these things where I would just try to make small talk with him, and you start
Wouldn't
yelling
have it.
I would just play a game because I used to have to take him to like the airport and to the train station. He's like famous. Like if you take a psychology class in college, he's like in the book.
You know that guy.
Yeah. I didn't know that because I didn't take any psychology, but people have told me, holy shit, you worked for Albert Ellis. But I'm like, yeah, he was old, and I used to just take him to the airport sometimes just because he was so old. And I play a game. How many questions will it take until he asks for his book or his newspaper?
Really?
Yeah. So I'd be like, what do you think of this weather? I would just ask like, really.
Just benign
And then he
random
was going, give
question.
my book. And then, so that was our relationship. One time, I fixed a doorstop. I replaced a doorstop. I'm not mechanically inclined at all. And I was so proud of myself. Do you know one of those boing doorstops? I fixed one, and I put a new one on. And he's walking by. It was in his office. And I go, look, Dr. Ellis, I just put the new doorstop on. And he goes, you're a genius. And then just you're a genius. Just cut down my spine.
You're a genius.
So he was that kind of. He was like your Woody Allen, your psychology version of like Woody Allen.
Yeah.
That kind of guy.
So then you were working there and then going to Hunter, and then when you graduated, because this is what I find super interesting is there's a gap of 4 or 5 years before you start doing comedy after you finish school.
Yeah.
So what were you doing?
I worked at a printing place on Long Island. I worked construction with my friend's dad's company. I worked, I think, when I was 21, I know when I turned 21, I was working at Blockbuster. I worked when I was 20, right before comedy, I worked as a doorman on the Upper East Side for 2 years. Got fired from there. I have an old joke that I still do about it where I got fired for leaving the door open. Like I just
Did you really?
Yeah. Well, what really happened was it was because of the air conditioning, and this random guy came down and complained, and he goes, "Why is the door open and the air conditioning's on?" And I didn't know. I thought he was just a visitor. And I was like, I don't know, the breeze? I just like made up and he freaks. And it turned out it was the guy who owned, like the family, like the patriarch of the family who owned the building.
Oh,
and he was like, he goes, I'm going to talk to your boss tomorrow. You're done. And I was like, my stomach dropped. And
You'd been there for 2 years and you got fired over that?
Something like that, like a year and a half at this point, right? But then what happens is he talks to my boss's boss. My boss is like, you got to go. And I'm like, all right. And then my friends found out and told the residents, and the residents liked me so much.
That's what I was going to say.
They wrote a letter and got me the job back. And then these guys were so embarrassed. They waited 3 months, and then he called me and he goes, it's not working out. I go, is this because you're embarrassed? And he kind of just like stared at me, and I was like, all right, I got that. But it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a blessing because I wouldn't have done stand up. I was like, when I was in that job, I was like, this is my job. I was like planning on having a day gig or working around at a second job, because a lot of those guys do 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Because the doorman job, you're not wrong. It's like not that much. So you guys would do 2 jobs. So I was like, this is what I do. I might build up to be a handyman one day or a super, whatever it is, or a building manager, whatever it is. But I was planning on just doing that.
Wow.
And I got fired from there, and it was a blessing. And then I forget where I worked for, probably some random job. And then at 28, my friend got me a job at her insurance company doing facilities, and I did that, and that was the job I started when I did comedy. And it was a no responsibility job. I could leave at 5, go do open mics, go do spots. I was ended up moving to Brooklyn. Continued. Got bought out from that job because they were closing down. Went to another facilities job at this place called JWT, this advertising agency. Got fired from there in 6 months because the lady hated me.
Yeah.
And also, I'm so lazy. But and then started doing comedy. But it was kind of another blessing because my days got freed up. I was able to make more appointments, and I got a few months later I got Letterman, and then it went from there.
Boom.
Yeah.
And then when did you really start like leaning into like the kind of like having a good time, like drinking and partying and stuff?
I was doing it all throughout this.
Oh, you were? Okay. Well, because I asked because you said you didn't really start drinking until high school, and then it wasn't even that big in college, and
it
then
was more. I mean, like I wasn't doing the college age stuff. Wasn't like college experiences, but I was going out boozing with my friends in Brooklyn and Queens and wherever I lived.
Okay, so as you got older, it just
I just was part of my weekends.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was married. Me and my ex-wife, when we first met, we would booze on the weekends and whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I was always drinking this entire
this whole time.
It's probably why I'm not farther along in life.
Well, the only reason I really bring it up is because Kevin kind of did the same thing. He did the old like bait and switch. We were like talking about just random stories and stuff, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been drinking this like through all these stories. I've been drinking this whole time."
Oh yeah, like it was just functionally part of my life.
Yeah,
like when I moved in, so a lot of it started when, to do a time frame, when I moved into Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and when I was 28, and then with a couple buddies of mine, all of our friends would come into that area, and like that's when all the crazy stuff, that's my most drinking I was doing. Yeah. Was, as opposed to, well, right now is a little too much, but especially for my age, but the drinking was going on then was like the debauchery, crazy drinking. Like that's when a lot of the stories I have are like come out of like they're like fight stories, because like, you know what I'm saying, like drunken fight stories. Yeah.
Would they be with you and your friends, or you against other people? Or?
Us against other people.
Okay.
So like I'll give you an example. New Year's Eve, one of the craziest nights of my life was I think we got into 2 different fights in the night. It was me. And the story I'm thinking of, we're at this place called Harefield Road, amazing bar in Williamsburg, really fun bar. But everybody's one of those nights where they're like everybody's blacked out, everybody's just gone loaded, and there's no rhyme or reason going on whatsoever. Yeah. And
been a part of a lot of those
I'm drinking, I'm having a good time. I turn around and I see this giant off the boat Irish dude, like cement worker, with my friend Ken in a headlock.
Oh, you just turn around.
I turn around and that's what I see. That's what my drunken mind see. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm so loaded. Beer muscles activate. And I'm not kidding, this guy's probably 6'3", giant guy. I'm 5'8", I'm a freaking mess. I walk up to the guy and I just punch him in the back of the head. This guy lets go, almost like Thanos, just lets go of my friend, and then literally, I'm not joking, takes me by the neck, picks me up, and presses me against the wall and starts closing in.
Were you freaking out?
I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. And he's not even saying anything. It's like it's like a fucking Marvel movie. He's just collapsing his fingers on my neck, and I'm like flailing like I'm Iron Man.
You're dying.
Yeah, exactly. And then they pull him off me. And then he kind of tries to go at me again, and they pull him again, and they kick him outside. And it turns out it's this off-the-boat Irish maniac, and I immediately sobered up, obviously. Yeah. A near-death experience will do that to you.
Yeah, it'll wake you up.
Yeah. So he is outside and pacing back and forth like a lion.
Just waiting.
Like the Ghost in the Darkness, just outside. Right? Remember that movie, Ghost in the Darkness? And I all of a sudden just become like the complete nerd. I'm sitting there going, should I go apologize? And I'll never forget this. The bartender looks at me and goes, do not go outside. You do not leave this bar. He goes, don't worry, he'll go away. Also, he causes problems all the time. He gets kicked out. Don't worry about it. So he paces for a while, people like in between me and him, and then finally he just goes off into the darkness.
And you never saw him again?
Never saw him again.
God, I wonder if he's still out there.
I'm sure he is. Who knows? But all I remember he was gigantic. The ironic part of the whole story was, you remember how I turned around and he had my friend in a headlock? Yeah. The reason he had my friend in a headlock is because my drunken, stupid friend Ken just walked up to this Irish behemoth and just slapped him in the face.
Oh my God.
So I'm the asshole where it's like, I'm the asshole who's
he had him in a headlock for a good reason.
For a very good reason.
Let him go.
He'll go, my friend. So it was just a lot of that was like a lot of fuel for all these fights was like, I don't fight people.
Yeah.
But when I was
going to ask,
in my 20s and drunk, it was never me well, I always thought it was for a good reason.
Yeah. You never started them. You finished them.
Yeah. Like, and I'll give you I remember there was a silly drunk. It was really quick. You ever do this? You ever been so drunk where?
Yes.
Physics don't matter. Where like I was early on. This is an early one. I was probably in my early 20s, and I'm at this place called BK Sweeney's, and I was sitting on somebody's jacket by accident, and I was so loaded. They come over and they just did that thing where they grabbed their jacket under you.
Yeah.
But I was so loaded, they just pulled me back with it, and I just fell back with the jacket. And I just remember looking up at the person, and they didn't try to help me up or anything. They
just walked away.
I don't know why I remember that. That's 20 years ago, but. I had tons of moments where it was like these fights that me and my friends would get to around that time because there was just so much drinking going on, and it was just a lot of Irish rage.
I was going to say, is that something that you just get amped up when because my thing is
beer muscles, Irish, just whatever.
Towards the end of my alcoholism, I actually preferred to drink alone. And so I would just drink at home by myself.
Right. Okay.
Just do shots by myself.
Which is supposed to be one of the red flags.
It's also. People say that, but it's also incredibly responsible. I don't spend nearly as much money. I'm not driving around. I'm safe in my own home.
The thrifty drunk.
Yeah, exactly. $26.87 would give me a handle of Smirnoff and a pack of cigarettes. But before then, in my 20s, like when I played college football, I wouldn't drink. Like my alcoholism wasn't even close. Like we would drink like once or twice a week, but we would drink a lot. And we would, a lot of times, like people, because I played college football in Florida, in the South, so people would come up and like be like, the frat guys would be like, well, let's try to fuck up the football players. And they'd always turn into like a big.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's like, you guys are out of your mind. Like, we're Division I athletes. Like, we're going to kill all of you.
Who goes up against a bunch of football players?
Well, and sometimes I would get into fights like that, but I never, like, then, like, in my mid-20s to like mid-30s, I was never a fight guy. Like I would go out, even if I'd go out with friends, I'd be like, "Come on, guys! Like let's just go drink our drinks."
That's what should happen.
Yeah, but you guys were like, "Nah, fuck this."
Well, no, we weren't ever looking for it, but it was just all these scenarios that just ended up happening.
You say we weren't looking for it, but Ken walked up to the guy and slapped him right in the face.
Just because he's a nice guy. You're just loaded.
Yeah.
Who knows who's in his brain?
I didn't like the way he looked at me.
So anyway, I'll tell you another one that's kind of crazy. So I have another friend of mine who's like from Ireland, moved here when he was 12, absolute maniac, good guy, but maniac, and not a big dude. Not this. He's a fairly tiny guy, and he would always get into all sorts of mischief when we were that age. And one time we go to this bar. And I think we were at a bar before it, so I already had a couple of drinks. And we go to this bar. I think it was like near like Times Square area, but maybe like a little bit farther east or whatever. I forget which bar. Anyway, it was packed. We're there. Unbeknownst to me, because I'm hanging out, or I went to the bathroom, what was going on, or I was trying to talk to a girl or something like that. He tried to talk to some girl at the bar and got rejected. And she like full on. She just full on like just blew him off, like, and he was
like embarrassed him,
very, very upset about it. And we are about to leave. We're walking towards the door, and he goes, "Do me a favor." I'm like drunk. I had no idea this happened. He goes, "Do me a favor." He goes, "Stand by the door and hold it with your foot open and pretend like you're looking for me in the bar or looking for somebody in the bar." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Just do it. Just do it. Come on, just do it." So like, all right. So I prop my foot and I'm like fake acting, looking in the bar. And apparently he goes over and he just takes a full beer and just pours it over this girl's head. And this is how this kid was. And just books it out of, I just see him run by. He just runs by me, does not even look at me.
Yeah.
Sprints. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know he did that. I just knew something happened. Because it was like he was in the bar. I just let the door go and walk away like Kaiser Soze at the end of Usual Suspects. There's a lot of movie references on your podcast.
Yeah.
But I just walk away like I don't know this guy. I don't know nothing, right? So I get to around the corner, like I'm making a right. I go around the corner. Out of nowhere, these two dudes just like come up. He go, whoa, whoa. They stop me. Whoa, buddy, where you going? And I'm like, he's like, who's your friend? And I'm like, what friend? What are you talking about? The guy you were with, the guy in the bar that you were with. He goes, you just poured a whole pint of beer on my girlfriend's head. And I was like, I don't know what guy are you talking about? The guy, we saw you talking to him. Who is he? I'm like, I don't know. I just met that guy tonight. I don't know. So one guy, one guy is asking me questions. The other guy's on his phone. And this is like the time of like T9 text.
Okay.
He's feverishly texting. He's going, sucks for you, buddy. Your friend left you here. Sucks for you. There's two guys. Out of nowhere, two more guys come out of the bar. Out of nowhere, two more guys come behind me. It was like out of a fucking movie.
Are you serious?
Two more guys come behind me. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he's just like, sucks for you. I don't know what the fuck. And then he's just getting closer and closer in my face. And he goes, we saw you with the guy. And I go, I just met him tonight, man. I don't know what you're doing. And more guys come over. I would say, realistic, there's probably like, I would think there was like 8 or 9
That's
guys.
a lot of guys.
A lot of guys. And they were like, it was this weird moment where I was like, I'm going to get killed. And they're just kind of staring at me, and I'm like quietly standing there like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, I gotta go. And they're like, nah. And they're putting me off. Out of nowhere, I kind of, in my peripheral, see a yellow taxi pull up next to the group of guys. And it's my friend is in the taxi, and he's texting me. Like, he's like, get in the taxi.
Yeah.
He's going like this.
But you're not looking at your phone.
I kind of see him doing it. I feel the buzzing of my phone in my pocket. So I see him texting. I see him going like this. I can like kind of see it in the car. But I'm like, the minute that I would turn and go in this taxi, they would just stop. They would just stand in front of the taxi. So I was like, no. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's like temperatures are rising. I'm freaking the hell out. I'm like, all right, there's only one thing I can do. And I just full on freak the fuck out. I just full on go, I don't know what to tell you, man. I go, I don't know the guy. I go, did I pour the beer on your girlfriend's head? No. He goes, what do you want from me, man? What do you want from me? I go, I didn't do shit. You're going to beat me up because it was something some random guy did? What the fuck's your... I just lose my mind.
Yeah.
I go into like berserk mode because I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. But not in like a tough way, more like a just a weirdo way.
Yeah.
And then
like you're fed up.
But it works. They go, whoa, no, we're just saying, man. It's messed up that he did that. He's like, he shouldn't have poured beer in her head. And they're freaking. He goes, I know, it's really messed up. I'm sorry it happened. Good luck. And I just walk. And my friend picks me up around the corner, and we get out.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Because I've done it where I've freaked out, but like in a tough guy way, and it just makes everyone else get more amped up.
100%. That's the thing. The energy I had was not. I was talking about this with my friend the other day on the podcast. I've never been mugged, but I think it's not because I look tough, because I don't look worth the hassle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And also doing that, bugging out, having a little meltdown, they're going, oh, this is way more of a problem. Not that it's like we're intimidated by this dude.
This is gonna
cause way more of a problem.
This is a guy who's gonna like go to the police and like fill out reports.
Or just give us enough problems where it's more of a hassle than it's worth. And also I think they were like trying to be tough and they weren't. And they were trying to like, it's like they realized like, oh shit, we can't just beat up this random dude.
We're just gonna
nothing.
Yeah. I've been in that situation where I've tried to catch the people that are trying to act tough but aren't, and I've actually caught the tough people, if that makes sense. So like one time I was leaving a bar with my twin sister and some of her friends, and this guy was like catcalling her. And I've tried to tell the story on stage, but it's a little intense. Yeah. But I was like standing between my sister and then me and then this guy, and I just didn't like him. And he's like, tats all over his face.
You knew the guy?
No. We had no idea. And he was just like, my sister's wasted. He's just catcalling her. And I'm like, all right, man, like, just leave us alone. And this is in Florida.
Of course it is.
He goes to get in his car with his buddies. And as he's rolling up the window, he's like, I don't understand, man. I'm a good guy. And I was like, yeah, whatever, man. And as he's rolling up the window, he goes, well, fuck you then, Frosted Flake. And the window rolls up. And I turn and I go, I can't hear you. And I put my head through his car window, shattered it.
Were you loaded?
Oh, yeah. I was really drunk. And I put my head, so he goes, fuck you, Frosted Flake, as he's rolling up the window. And I turn, I go, I can't hear you. And I put my forehead through the car window.
Jeez.
Shatters everywhere. His sister, who's driving, is like freaking out. She's like, my car, are you fucking kidding me? So him and his two buddies get out of the car.
Really?
And so
that's how I know I'm tough. I would be like, Oh, having a great day.
Yeah. So, but I try to go what we were just talking about. I try to go the other, like I try to like really elevate it. And they're like kind of circling me, like getting ready to fight. And they're like, are you fucking crazy? And I snap and I go, yeah, I'm fucking crazy. And I started like punching myself in the face and doing all this shit because now I realize it's 3-on-1. Like I'm about to get the shit kicked out of me.
Yeah.
So I really have to play this up.
To get rid of a couple of the guys.
So they're like, yeah, this isn't worth the trouble. But for them, it was worth the trouble. And they kicked the shit out of me. It was so worth the trouble.
There was no M. Night Shyamalan.
No, there was no twist. I tackled one of the guys, the main guy who was talking to my sister. Because I played football my whole life, so I knew how to, like, I couldn't really fight, but I knew how to, like, tackle. Yeah. So I, like, perfect form tackle, drive him into the ground. And then his buddy started kicking me in the back of the head. And I was like, oh, this is over.
Did they mess you up? Like,
yeah, well,
injuries?
luckily, a lot of our friends were still in the bar. And one of my buddies was there with his friends who were bouncers at, like, other bars. So, like, they're big dudes. So I, like, crawl, hands and knees, army crawl into the bar because I'm like, I just have to get inside and then my friends will see what's happening and they'll jump on these guys.
Is that what you did?
That's exactly what I'm crawling to the bar, getting kicked in the side, kicked in the back of the head. And I get to the bar and I open up the bar and as one of my buddies turns and he goes, Tassive! And everyone rushes out and beats the shit out of these guys.
Really?
They close the door. The bar manager already didn't like me because I was only like 20 at the time, but I had a habit of when I went back to Daytona, I'd get drunk and like break shit as bar.
Right.
So the bar manager already didn't like me. So he slams the door shut, locks it, looks at me and he goes, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Of course. Yeah, what the fuck was wrong with you?
And I snuck out of the back and it was a weird, like, cops show up and I just hid behind, like, one of those big green electrical boxes.
Yeah.
In an alley. I just hid behind it. And it was like GTA. Like, after 5 minutes, the cops stopped searching. I just went
stars
home.
went down?
Yeah, I just went home. But
wow.
That was definitely a time where I was like, oh, I'll just amp this all the way up. And they'll leave me alone. And that is not
wow.
how it worked out.
The Comedy Cellar has their... Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Comedy Cellar has their like holiday party. This is the closest. This is the most recent fight. It's not even a fight story, but I go to the Comedy Cellar Christmas party, which is like happened months and months later because they do it purposely later. And it was like, I always get too loaded there. And I was like beyond drunk. And I walked out like 4 a.m. and there was like this dude, a homeless dude or whatever. There's tons of those guys out there. I usually recognize them over there because I'm always over there. But,
yeah, I'm the same way because I do a lot of the mic circuit.
Right, exactly. But like this guy I didn't know, and he comes up, and I didn't start a fight with him. I was just like, nah. He's like asking me for money, like getting up my face. I'm like, nah, and I'm kind of pushing him away, and he just full on cocks back and just punches me in the face. Really? And hits my jaw and everything. And then my Uber pulled up at that moment, and I'm like, I just get in my Uber and I go. But immediately, this is how I know I was drunk. My first thought wasn't, what the fuck? Ow. It was like, you didn't knock me down, right? And like I was like, you didn't knock me down. I was like proud of myself, drunkenly proud of myself. Yeah. I was like, he didn't. I go, he hit me hard. He hit me cocked back, and I was like, I took his punch.
I still got it. So when did you? Because you, like we were talking about, you started at 28 and everything, and now you're 44. How long did it take for you to like start getting like past it, like the Cellar and like all these big clubs?
Cellar first hosting, just like you said, you were telling me about Caitlin. Hosting helped me out a lot. I still host the Cellar. I stopped for a bit because I needed a break, but the only place I'll host, because I did so much of it in my career, hosting helps you until it doesn't. You have to have a good mindset towards it because you can get very, very relaxed into that host mindset. But what it can do is it can open up a lot of doors, and it did do that for me. So the first place I hosted was Stand Up New York, and then I had a situation with the Cellar. That was the first club. The first club I worked was Comics, but that's gone now. It used to be on 14th and 9th, and I ran a couple shows downstairs and then worked my way upstairs, hosting and then doing spots, and then I did a feature weekend, and they shut down like a year, 2011, like whatever. But really great club, great people that ran it. And anyway, so I went from there, then we started working Stand Up New York, and I'd work a couple of random clubs. But Stand Up New York was like one of the ones I was working the most, and I was hosting there. And Kevin Brennan, you probably know who that is.
Yeah.
He came one time, and I was hosting the show, and he's like, I have to get down to the Cellar. Can you do 5 of your 10, and then do the other 5 after I'm done? I'm like, sure. And I went up, and I just had a really good 5 minutes. I got him right away. And he was like, that was pretty good. Do you want to open for me at Go Bananas? And And I was already kind of headlining by that point in the road, but I was like, I grew up watching Kevin. I knew him a little bit. We were friendly. And I was like, yeah, totally. And I went there, and I also was going hoping like, hey, if I kill it, he might offer to wreck me at the Cellar. And that's what happened with
okay, awesome.
So then once the Cellar, and then I worked the Stand before that for a while and stuff like that. So probably around, I would guess that was all around like 2012, 2011, around there. Because I came up in bar shows and obviously Mike's, but I came up in mostly bar shows and then ran my own shows and stuff like that. So I didn't go right for the club route right away. I would do like random club spots. One night or see, I did a couple bringers when I first started, stuff like that. But I didn't. The first club I worked was comics and then Stand Up New York. And then that's when it started rolling.
Okay, when you because you came up in New York, obviously, when you finally got into like the Cellar and Stand Up New York and stuff, was that like a big? Because I asked a lot of people.
Big Cellar was as big for me as doing Letterman.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, because
never in a million years did I think I would be.
I talk to people all the time, and very rarely, but it does happen. People will be like, no, like I'm funny, and I book stuff, and
both.
I've had a couple, and I'm like, no, but it's like. I can go to any club in New York and I'm fine to this day. And I've had a lot of people who are paid regulars at the Cellar on this show. But to this day, I feel like I'm trying to sit at the cool kids table every time I go into Olive Tree to get dinner or something. I'm always like, I don't belong here. Like, this is for real comics. Like, I don't even want to hang out here. And like, I just leave.
It's got that mistake. I had the same feeling. I only think I went there before I worked there twice. And both times it was somebody who worked there. I met and had wings with them or something.
Yeah.
I purposely didn't go there because I didn't want to come off like I was trying to push myself on.
Well, and that's so. God rest his soul, Bob Saget. He was doing a show at the Florida Theater, so we ate at the restaurant, and my girlfriend was working, and she goes, "Oh, this is shortly before he passed away," because my girlfriend was talking. This is right before we moved to New York, so like a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. She goes, "Oh, my boyfriend and I are moving to New York in about 6 months," and he goes, "Oh, really? For what?" And she goes, "Well, my boyfriend does comedy," and he goes, "He has to go to the Cellar," and that's the first thing he said. He goes, "He has to go to the Cellar, like be around. That's where comedy lives in New York. Be around the Cellar." So. With that in mind, when we first moved here, I would go to the Cellar like just to sit at Olive Tree and just be around it.
Yeah.
And after, like I said, the second or third time, I was like, I don't.
Well, you know what it is.
Like, I appreciate the advice, but I don't belong here.
What he was saying is you got to work the Cellar.
Yeah.
But also, you just got here. That makes complete sense. I'm talking about there was a while where a lot of comics, I think it was right when I first got past there, a lot of comics were kind of hanging around and just staring at the comics. It was a very weird vibe of people, I think, that they thought if I'm around, I think some people have like the mindset where, oh man, they might just ask to throw me up. Like meaning like they're gonna give me an audition if I'm just around and hanging out and somebody's going, oh, this guy's funny.
I know that for a fact because there's a lot of people I hang out with who do bar shows in the open mic scene because I work around the corner from the Stand, so I go to the Stand a lot.
Yeah.
Like after work, I'll go and like hang out with the bartenders or go get something to drink, and I know a lot of the comics there, so I'll go hang out. And there's so many times when there's a produced show where all these people flood out of the woodwork. I will go because I'm like, I like the pizza and it's around the corner from my work. So I go to eat.
Yeah.
And they'll just flood hoping to get like a guest spot on it. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
It's not how it works. And don't get me wrong, I think it probably has maybe in the past.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know of a story where there was an impromptu audition that somebody got because they were having the Cellar radio show and somebody was like, oh, I don't work here. I go, and then Noam or somebody was like, well, we never done one, just an impromptu on the radio show audition. And then this comic was like, I'll do it now. And they were like, all right. And they did it and got passed. And,
wow.
Yeah. But then it's once in eon, you know.
Yeah,
like
it's decades.
Yeah. I think mostly they're like they want to be the ones who are putting like going through the proper due diligence
that's right. And I think it gets twisted sometimes because sometimes I know there are certain comics that see me at like the Stand a lot and stuff, and they're just like, oh, he thinks if he just hangs out, they're gonna. And it's like, no. I work around the corner. I like the food, and a lot of my friends are here. Like, I have no qualms about. That's why I still hit 6 open mics every day when I'm off because I know that I have to go out and do the work at these other things.
Right, exactly. Yeah, 100%. I think that's like. I think there's a wide array of different thought processes on what gets you to this X, Y, and Z. And I think there's also been a lot of paths that people have. But I think the being funny path and having comics think you're funny and getting things from that has kind of always stayed somewhat pretty strong, you know?
And if other people, this is my big thing, is that if other people can see you, especially now that I don't drink anymore, because I used to, and I think I've told this before, but I used to I lived in Oklahoma City for like 3 months. My
And
cousin
they
was
have a good club there. I've never done it. But
Looney Bin, yeah. But my cousin was living up there, and they also have Bricktown, I want to say. But my cousin was living up there. He was doing Teach for America, and he was like, "Hey, man, I know you started comedy a few years ago in South Florida. If you want to come up here, kind of dry out, you can do comedy with us. We do shows all the time." So I go up there to do comedy, and I did not dry out. I was drinking every day. So I'd go to open mics, and I was a pretty big guy, like not in shape, but still, I'm 6'1", like 240 pounds at the time. So no one would get me off stage. So I'd go to these mics at these bar shows and literally, Sean, I'm not kidding. I'd do like 12 minutes of like an Arnold impression, wasted out of my mind. I'd get up and be like, what do we do?
That is football player confidence right
Yeah, and people are like they're shining the light, like walking up, shining it in my face. And I'm like, get the light out of here. Like I'm doing my time. So to go from that to now like understanding like, oh, like... There's rules to this. Like as loosey-goosey as they are, there are still rules. And I think it's really benefited me because I tell people all the time, if I started drinking in New York, like I'd start burning shit down.
Yeah, it's hard not to. Like that's also, like we were saying before, you're like, when did most of the drinking happen? Open mic time kind of did not help because you're getting paid in drink tickets when you're doing bar shows. You're getting, and we used to have a huge social aspect to this thing. And don't get me wrong, people still hang out kind of, but not really.
Not the same way.
I've mentioned it before. I'm not sure if people brought it up there used to be a show, when I first started, and when I was probably like 5-6 years in, the most popular show in the city was called Cabin. It was that Cabin bar. Okay. It was called CSL, but it was Sean Patton ran it with this guy Chesley and this other guy who stopped running it after like a year. But it was perfect rooms, dive bar, $2 PBRs. It wasn't just the show was good. It was like comics. And this was before kind of the scenes were met. There used to be clear-cut alt and club comedy.
Yeah, we've talked about that
and
before.
Now alt-ish, it's kind of morphed into like one thing in a way. You know, you still have a little bit. But club comedy was kind of getting to the point where it was viewed as a little bit mostly hacky. And then they were allowing in these newer, anyway. But this place was like a bar where the show would be great. It was this little intimate room that was separate. And then the bar hang was like each week, people just assumed you were going to Cabin. Yeah. And people from different groups of comics, like, hey, I don't know, black comics or alt or club or whatever it is.
Manhattan comics, Brooklyn comics.
Yeah, everybody. Everybody would just come to this one place and like you'd be like, hey, and like to hang out, whatever. And it was great because you'd pick up spots. After a while, if you knew enough people, you'd pick up spots. You'd do the show, have a good set, maybe grab another spot. Like it was. That I don't think really exists now, and it's kind of a bummer. I think online is part of the reason it doesn't, but also it's like one of those things where it's like things change. You know, what are you going to do?
You have to evolve.
Also, I'm older. I'm in a different spot than I was then. It was the come up part of it. It was the thing of like I wasn't a professional. I was working, trying to work up to that point. You know, so but I wish people had that because it did. You make friends from it. And
that's one of my favorite parts about it is the people I've met now.
Yeah.
The friend, because now I've got these people where it's like when they're on a show, I'll go to support, and then they put me on some of their stuff, and it's like we come up together. Like everyone talks about their class, and it's like coming up with all these people. I think that's one of the best parts about the whole thing. I
think so too, but I think that this. What I've also realized over time, and you kind of touched on it earlier, is that it is. To this day, I probably don't think about it enough that it is a business. Yeah, and there are people that think of it that way that are also approaching these social hangs as it's a bit. I can come to this. This is us in the break room, and then I go and I do the business part. I go back to my spreadsheet.
Fuck that.
I know, but it's like then you see them and they have their mind on the prize and they're doing stuff. I'm the asshole who's like, hey, if I have you come hang out for my birthday, I'll be fine. Like it's like that kind of thing.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So I think having that part. Don't get me wrong. Having too much of that, then you become the nerd who everybody's like, Jesus, relax, just hang out. There's a healthy balance between both.
Absolutely.
And I haven't found it.
Well, on that note, plug everything one more time. Plug the podcast, the radio show.
Absolutely. The podcast is called Brand New Jerks. You can find us on TikTok and on YouTube. We put up YouTube shorts all the time and longer clips. at Shawnee Time on Instagram and Twitter, and also at Shawnee Time TikTok on TikTok. I'm still learning that because I'm ticking and talking. I'm still learning that, and I'm gonna in the fall I'll have a YouTube special coming out.
Oh, sweet.
It'll be like maybe 40 minutes. It's gonna be some crowd work and some jokes, and it's just one night of me at New York Comedy Club. So,
hell yeah!
Stay on the.
We'll make sure to plug the shit out of it when it comes out.
Please do.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. At Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. Check out the Patreon, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Perfect.
How was that?